Welcome to Soul Talks with Prophet and Paul, conversations on how the soul lights the way through life, relationships, and business. I'm Paul Wozniak, a realtor with Remax Alliance.
And I'm Alison Prophet, a holistic life and business coach.
Alison, a new episode of the podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you today and excited to dive into the topic. I love whenever we text back and forth and we get ready for an episode and you go, and you're always, so amenable to the idea of me coming up with a topic. And but you said, I kind of have something in mind. Do you want to just go with my idea? And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to hear what it is. So connections as currency is what you came up with. How did you come up with that topic?
Yeah, so I was actually in a client session in my coaching practice this week, and we were doing some conversations about her energy leadership profile, which is the assessment I use. And we were talking about these different ways that you can approach your business. And when we are hyper focused on the goals of the money, sometimes that becomes harder. And then when we were talking about the other levels, we were really talking about more about like how important it is like when you're in the moment, when it feels like things are flowing and you're open to opportunity and you see the possibilities that success seems to kind of come along. And I literally said, yeah, it's like connection is actually a currency.
Mm.
And she was like, oh my gosh, that's an amazing nugget. I was like, it is. I need to write it down.
Well, it alliterates. I mean, it's
So I did. I
alliteration,
wrote it on
connections as currency. It's great when these things come out and they have a bit of a flow off of the tongue and then they
yeah.
ring so true.
Yes, exactly. And this particular session, there were so many nuggets. This week has been really interesting for me. And the initial topic I was thinking of talking about was actually this idea of how when it seems like we're having things that are really hard and really difficult, how sometimes then on the end of that we have all of these amazing affirmations and mirrors and other things that kind of point us that we're going in the right direction. So anyways, that particular conversation, there were so many nuggets in there. She actually took a red pen and she was like writing all of those nuggets down and she's going to send them to me. But when we were talking about this idea, after I said that phrase, she was very much like, yeah, I think it's almost even like connecting first with our own self-worth is where it's at. And then when we do that, we can show up so much different in the world. And then other people see our value and they're confident that if we're confident, we're kind of having this energy that we're showing up with in our connections, they're drawn to us. And so from a business perspective, that connection turns into business often.
Yeah.
It was just a really fun idea. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on where have you seen when you are connected that it's tied to your business success, and when you're not connected, how it creates like a downturn in your business success.
Wow. I mean, so much. It's just, well, if we break down the word connection, and get into sort of a definition of it, or all of the different meanings that connection can have for us. It takes me to my moonlighting side hustle that led to our meeting, yoga. You and I met at a yoga event, a yoga party for Yoga Pod Fort Collins, and the term yoga means to yoke, right? To join together, to unify. It's a union. And the idea of union is like union with what? Well, it can be a union between my breath and my movement, because there will not be movement without my breath. It can be between my mind and my body,
Mm,
because one of the things that I went to yoga for was in order to get a little bit closer to mindfulness and potentially meditating, because I have trouble sitting and just breathing. But if I want to do one movement with a breath, because I'm so activity oriented and so sports oriented, that just a little bit of movement, even if it's slow movement, for me really resonated with me because of my affinity for for movement. So, a union, a connection between the breath and the movement. And then it also can mean whenever I am being mindful and being in the moment that, I was seeking yoga to try to bring me to, I'm more connected to my higher power.
Mm,
So all of the connections, the union that yoga brings, really harkens back to the idea of connection. And then with connection or without connection, I have a sobriety journey that we've talked about in previous episodes. And I said that, one of my sponsors in the past said that they define sobriety as an uninterrupted connection between myself and my higher power. That connection, is anything getting in the way of the connection between me and my higher power? If I have an uninterrupted connection between myself and my higher power, then things are going to be in good shape because I'm connected in that way. And if I'm not enjoying that connection and I'm not actively a part of that connection, then just about everything in my life goes to shit. Excuse my language.
totally.
You
Yeah, we'll
know,
put the explicit warning on this
yeah.
episode.
I mean, it really does.
It's
If I'm
true.
if I'm not connected in that way, in that initial connection between myself and my higher power, between my God, then things aren't going to go well for me. So connection is so deep, such a deep topic, such an
Yeah,
important
I
topic.
know we could like do a whole entire podcast about that topic. And it's funny as you're talking and I'm just hearing all these different words. I'm even remembering that connection was such a big part of Profit Coach when I first started as a sales coach. I was the one that really realized and that my clients, when they would come to me around the topic of sales, they would be so focused on everything except for connecting with the person.
Yeah.
They were so focused on the outcome of that sales conversation. And through the training that I do on sales conversations, and then through the work that we do to really unpack, like, well, when you think about when you're making a buying decision, like, what is it that makes you buy from somebody? What is it that like gets you to lean in to be more interested about a product, a service, or working with somebody? And the truth is that like it really is about connection.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to think about how um I'm just laughing because you're talking about breath and how important that is. And one of the things that I say in that sales training is that your breath, and there might actually be a blog that is out there that I contributed to, where I talk about that, like, your breath is one of the potential most powerful tools in your sales conversation,
Mm.
because when we breathe, we are actually kind of activating our parasympathetic nervous system, right? Like, we're activating relaxation.
Yeah.
And when we are in a sales conversation, whether we're the buyer or the seller, because I know we have lots of people that listen to this that are not just business owners, but when you're in a conversation that is sales oriented, being able to kind of just connect back with your breath so that your nerves aren't all taking over and you just shut down, and just take a moment to breathe, and maybe even invite the other human that's in the conversation to do that with you, because you might both need it. And when you're the person making the sale, energy is everything. So people are going to feel those nerves. So I love that before we hopped on to push record, you were like, hold on, let's take a moment and breathe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does. It activates that parasympathetic nervous system and lets us know that we're safe. If uninterrupted breathing is happening, then that's an indication that nothing's coming through the windows at us, is like physical danger and that kind of thing. And it's just it's a it's something that's so simple we forget about it. That it is it's an automatic thing that we breathe without thinking about it. So it's just always so interesting to me whenever I'm seeking self-improvement, to just even deal with the things that I have to deal with in my life, that it always came back to the same answer of mindfulness. even when I would go and speak with counselors and therapists and that kind of thing, we would unpack all kinds of things. But really, I don't remember any conversations happening that didn't go back to the idea of breathing mindfully and just settling things down, connecting with the essence of living, which is breathing. Now to reverse, back to what you were talking about with your clients on sales calls and who do we buy from. I just wanted to dive in there and be like, know, like, and trust. We buy from people that we
Absolutely.
know, like, and trust, and that comes from connection. I have been through countless sales trainings, and one of the reasons why I chose real estate as my profession is because it's a position where there's more education than selling. So whenever I'm going, because I'll work with a buyer, we go to a home, they look at the home, and I will never sell someone on a home, you know,
Right.
and like try to sort of jumpstart or move the process along faster than they want to, or sell them something that they don't want, that doesn't fit them. All I have to do is sit there, have the information about the home, convey that to them, answer questions about the home, and then they make their decision. And I believe that's the best kind of selling, is just educating, just being with people, giving them the information, and then allowing them to make their decisions, because they're the ones who have to live with it and in it, in my specific situation. So, it's never really a matter of selling for me. It's a matter of knowing what they want, connection, being there for them to answer the questions, connection, and answering follow-up questions, which, just continues the connection. And your audio is fine. I know you have some cleaners there at the house. It's we can't hear anything, so don't worry about that. It's all good.
I know,
um
like they're vacuuming.
no, it's quite okay. It sounds great.
It's real life.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, connection, God, we could unpack connection all day long, because then the other thing that the sales trainings, especially for real estate, let us know, because it's not a regular purchase that people are making. They're
It's
not
huge.
buying real
Yes.
estate on a
Yeah.
monthly, weekly, or daily basis, even a
Right.
yearly basis.
Yeah.
So one of the ideas is just, are we connected to our client base? Do they remember that I'm the one that they should use whenever it is time to make that purchase? So
Yeah.
that connection it's absolutely everything. And then, one step further, whenever I, am going through crisis and am really struggling with things, the thing that brings me out of crisis is you, my connection with you. When I
Mm.
needed help, I reached out to you, and our connection is, the bridge to get me out of that crisis.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things when we are in a place where we feel like things are not going well, or like things are, like a shit show, we tend to withdraw from connecting. And it's the thing that we actually kind of need the most in those moments.
Yeah, we call it the 1,000-pound phone.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's like you can't pick up the phone, you can't hit send on that text message. And
Yeah.
I mean, the work of Brene Brown, I mean, she's all about sort of, she talks about shame and vulnerability and courage and things like that. And really at the root of it, like, we are wired for connection. and and it comes even before language, right? Like, it's not even a language thing or a thinking
Yeah.
thing, it's truly an emotional thing. And so I think that's why, I mean, I love that we talk about hard topics on here. And sharing is challenging sometimes. It requires that we're really kind of putting ourselves out there and opening ourselves for the possibility of getting hurt or being judged or whatever the case may be. But if we're truly kind of in that place of having that connection with ourselves and a higher power, then the judgment and the shame and all that stuff that might come from those other people by you sharing yourself, like, will not have as deep as an impact. And we often can find ourselves connecting even deeper through hurtful things. And what I'd love to leave on this episode with today is the idea of how can you bring more connection into your life with yourself, people you know, and people you don't know? Because I think that's really what this world needs more of.
Well, for you, starting on an individual level, is there anything that you do to make sure that you have the personal, internal, individual connection that you need to your breath or your higher power to start
Yeah,
off?
I mean, I do find that, I mean, just finding time to be is important. Like not always doing something. Or if you're doing something that like you're conscious of what you're doing, right? You're not just going through the motions.
Yeah.
Like when I make my coffee, when I brew my coffee in the morning, it's almost like that is almost like a meditative thing for me.
Yeah.
It's just super intentional. And then, just meditating, praying, reading, whether it be scripture or my Bible or a book that just kind of really speaks to me. Just those things that fill me up. Music is a big one for me, actually. That I shared a song with you that I happen to be listening to when we got on. And I think I can sometimes it's hard to connect with ourselves through ourselves. And that's why I think music and art and nature, it almost allows us to do that self connection through another vessel, like through another channel. Because it's like you can hear lyrics of a song and notice the beauty in them. And I actually shared something on Spotify yesterday. It was a song, something about like coming home, and it was talking about like another. It was like I think it was a love song, and
Hmm.
it was about like I come home to you, like you are my home. And whenever I hear love songs, I love to really think about myself as the other in that relationship. So that could be a fun way for people to find that connection with themselves of like what would that look like if you were in a love relationship with yourself. That's something that I've been really doing a lot of in the last 2 years in particular. So I would say that is those are some of my things, and of course being out in nature and also surrounding yourself with people that aren't afraid of mirroring your how remarkable you are to you. I had a lot of that this week, which was very well timed. And so even though again that is external, I'm conscious about the people I surround myself with because that helps me in my self connection journey.
Can I ask you just briefly about rock climbing?
Oh yeah.
Um, for me, sports is one of the essences of connection. It's one of the most basic ways that I connect because, say I'm playing pickleball with my son, which is kind of like, sort of a tennis ping pong hybrid kind of thing. Um, and when I swing and hit a shot, I have to have the paddle at the perfect angle in order to send it where I want it to go. But it all happens so fast that it is like I'm truly connected to that moment. It's where I find myself most connected with the physical activity. Um, Whenever you're rock climbing, do you feel like you're connecting with yourself as much as with the rock that you're hanging from dangerously, wanting not to
Mm.
fall and having to make the right movements and really relying on that connection of knowing your body, knowing where it's going and all of that?
Yeah, I love this question because I think I've referred to rock climbing in other episodes, but rock climbing for me is this, it engages my whole being in ways where I have to be really present. So, and it's interesting because it requires slow and fast, right? You have to very quickly make judgments and assessments. Your moves are almost like, because they have to be very intentional.
Yeah.
So if it's a fast move, it's almost like it's a slow fast, right? It's like a focused fast, if that
Yep.
makes sense. And there is something about controlling your movement, which is a newer part of climbing for me, because I used to sort of just like go and like get real grippy because I'm like, I don't want to fall, right? But I've found in the last, I would say, 5 months of climbing that I've really been focusing on the sort of being very connected to the movement and the rock also in that time. Like actually, when I'm making that movement, saying, I know this rock will hold me and there's a place that I can be held. And there's also a connection. I mean, I'm not free soloing, which means that you're climbing without a rope or anything. And I don't really do bouldering. I do rope climbing, but with rope climbing, there's usually a person on the ground
Yeah.
belaying you. So
There's
it's
a
like
connection there.
yeah, there's a connection there too. And it's really interesting because there are times when you're climbing and like if it's windy, or if it's a really like a lot of times you can't hear the person on the ground if you're outdoor climbing.
Yeah.
And so if you have something that you need to call out to them, like they might not hear you. So there is something about finding other communication methods, but you also can feel that person's energy on the rope. Um, and
Yeah, I felt that being, belaying whenever they're way up,
uh-huh.
if they're getting out of earshot and you're looking up at them, and say they haven't moved for a while. Well, why haven't they moved for a while? They're thinking
Mhm.
deliberately, or are they in trouble? Let me focus in on them a little bit more. And it's
Yes.
interesting to be connected because you have to have more than verbal connection. Your
Yes.
responsibility as a belayer is remarkable.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yeah.
there's so many levels there.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like there could be a podcast about rock climbing.
I think there should be.
I think there ought to be too. But yeah, I mean, I think like there's such there. It's funny because I've had people that belay me that I actually feel like they're not super connected. And now that we're having this conversation, I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's like connected with themselves. I think they're sort of kind of out there and trying to figure things out, and you can feel that, right? And you can
Yeah.
energetically, when you meet a person, you can feel that confidence and that connection that they have with themselves. And I just think that like not everybody is going to have that. And so if we come across people that maybe don't seem to have that deep connection with themselves or with like some higher power or something, and they just seem like they're like a low vibrational person or something, like, I mean, you don't need to stay there long, but what can you do to shine light on that connection, that moment that you have with them? Because that might be the thing that could really shift their day. And that might stick in their mind of like, wow, I really remember like I was having a bad day. And this person said that they really liked my smile or something like that, or they struck up a conversation with me in the line about like the weather, or like, and not because sometimes that feels like mundane conversation, but sometimes that's what people need. They just need another person to speak and connect with. And I just think that the more we do that kind of stuff, the better that we'll feel. And it's doing it detached from expecting anything in return, and I think that that's the hardest thing.
Yeah. Well, we would love for you all to connect with us. So, like, share, and follow this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Share us out on social media if you found us through our Instagram or our Facebook, and send us a friend request if we're not connected currently. If somebody shared this with you, we'd love to connect with you on a digital level, a personal level, and on a spiritual level as well. We really appreciate your time. And what a great topic, Allison. Thanks for this today.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for being open to having the conversation.
Absolutely. This is Soul Talks with Prophet and Paul, conversations on how the soul lights the way through life, relationships, and business. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.